Welcome to another episode of Healthcare Connections podcast, powered by Healthcare Compliance Pros. I am your host, Jeremy Winn. Our purpose for this podcast is to introduce you to key topics and experts in the healthcare industry to ensure you have what you need to successfully manage your practice. Please subscribe and follow us on our social media channels to make sure you don't miss any new episodes. If you have recommendations for guests or topics for this podcast, email me at jwin@hcp.md. With that, enjoy this episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Winn, the Director of Sales here at Healthcare Compliance Pros. Excited to introduce you to another guest today. We've got Andrew Melendrez. He's a partner at Now Capital Partners. So welcome to the show, Andrew.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. I'd love, you've got a really cool background and story. I'd love for the audience to hear that. So if you don't mind, take a minute or two to share your story, your journey of how you ended up getting to Now Capital and what you were doing before that.
Yeah, so I founded a company when I was in my 20s. It was in the healthcare space. We treated people for sleep disorders like sleep apnea and insomnia. If you've ever heard of like a CPAP machine,
Yep.
That's what we tested people for and provided equipment to. And so what I did is I founded a location that was in the Albuquerque, Rio Rancho area. And then using mergers and acquisitions, I did kind of a mini roll up and I grew from one location to 23. So what I was doing is I was going out there and acquiring other physician-owned practices and other clinics and then converting them to my model. And what I discovered is that I was very talented at doing that, putting deals together, talking with business owners, talking with different entrepreneurs, and about what their exit strategy was, and if it involved selling to our organization because it might be a good fit to maintain their legacy. Those were really good conversations that were easy for me to have. And so after I sold that company to a doctor down in El Paso, I went into being an investment banker or M&A advisor for Now Capital or Now Exit.
Love that. And the thing I love about your story is the real world hands-on experience of actually doing this as a business owner. It's not often that I talk to M&A advisors who have actually done it with their own businesses prior to then getting in and helping others. So I was really excited to have you on because of your background, and that really leads into some of the topics we want to go through today. The first one is around exit strategies. And you shared, and with your experience, not every transaction transfers 100% of the business to a new party. I think that's just a common thought and then a common assumption in some of these transactions is a physician or a group of physicians just walks away, gives up 100% of everything, and maybe works for that business. But there's lots of different transaction types. So I was hoping you could talk about those different transactions, and particularly a focus around recapitalization.
Yeah, and that's a common transaction. So you can sell your business 100%, right? So you can, sell your business right off into the sunset. But what we're noticing in today's market with a lot of private equity backed portfolio companies that are acquiring businesses, they want to have some continuity with the sale. They want to make sure that the business owner that's selling the company, that after they make the purchase, that the transaction is going to be successful. And just one of the ways, now there's multiple ways to do this, but one of the ways is to not sell 100% of the business, but to sell, maybe 60, 70, 80% of the business. The fancy term for that is recapitalization. It's called a majority recap, selling a majority percentage of your business as an option in order for you to achieve a couple of different things. So as the seller, what you can do is you can diversify your risk, right? In healthcare, as you know, it's a risky business to be in. You have a lot of patients, you have a lot of regulations, you have licensing. And so what you can do is diversify your risk away from that business. The second thing you can do is diversify your wealth. Oftentimes people are, pursuing a transaction because they want to retire and they think that, well, I got to reach, 60, 65, 70 years old before I think about selling my business. Because that's where a lot of my wealth is captured. And what you can do is you can sell, a portion of it, right? You can sell 60%, 70%, and maybe take some chips off the table invest that with a wealth advisor. And so now you're diversifying your wealth away from your small business, into other investments, whether it be stocks, bonds, gold and silver, or whatever it is that you want to invest in. You're kind of reducing your risk as well in your overall portfolio. And then the last thing it does is it allows you to access growth capital. And so oftentimes these buyers, what they're wanting to do is purchase the business and then, with your help, grow the business and expand it. Oftentimes, when you're a business owner in the healthcare industry, you have a couple of options on how to grow your business. You can go out there and raise capital. You can go and get additional debt on the business, or another option is to partner with somebody.
Yeah.
And so that third option is if you partner with a private equity firm, oftentimes they have access to capital because they're looking to, grow the business. So now you're going to use somebody else's money, a financial sponsor's money, in order to grow the business, whether that be investing in technology, expanding the market, doing acquisitions, or, let's say you just want to, hire some more people or pursue some other different, aspects of your strategic objectives. So those are kind of like the three main areas that I see that we perform a lot of is, people that want to reduce their risk, they want to diversify their wealth, and also they want to have access to growth capital in terms of private equity funds.
Yeah, I love that. Are you seeing, the majority transactions, are they where a group's coming in and buying a majority of interest in the business? Or are you seeing anything in the market where maybe a group will come in and buy 20, 30%? Maybe there's a physician or group that doesn't want to give up full majority, or I should say a majority of the business. Are we seeing any of that in the market right now?
Yeah, you can see some minority recapitalizations like you talked about where they're purchasing 20 to 30% of the business. Those are, pretty specific cases where the business has to be probably doing well over like 50 million in top line revenue.
Okay.
And so that's definitely an option. There are some private equity groups that are out there that pursue those types of transactions, although there's probably a smaller basket of those
Yeah.
that are interested in minority recaps than those that would be interested in majority.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Appreciate that. So let's say there's a physician or a group that is interested in pursuing a transaction. Talk about some of the key areas that need to be addressed and some things that need to be prepared before they go out to market.
Okay, yeah, no problem. There's typically three key areas that we focus on whenever we are going to explore going to market with a provider. And what we do is we first start off by doing a strategy session. I use this whiteboard behind me, and we map out a strategy session to understand, what's the history of the business, what are their goals, what are some of the challenges that they may be dealing with, and also go over some of the sale options. If it's 100%, is it a recap? Are they trying to sell to the employees? Maybe they have a son or
Mm-hmm.
daughter that's going to take over. So we go through all those different, options. And then the other thing that we do is we identify where some of those challenges and what are some of the weaknesses of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so typically those weaknesses lie in one of three areas. That's in your sales process, that's in operations, or it's in administration.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's your sales process like? Are you the business owner that's doing a lot of the sales, has a lot of the key relationships, or is there, a vice president of sales that's managing all that? And if that's the case, then that's great. But if not, like, how do you fix that? What does your customer concentration look like? How are people finding out about you? What's your pipeline of work look like? And so if you have weaknesses there, we'll identify those and then help you, get those corrected before you go out to market. The second thing is operations. Are you the business owner, leading the research and development? Are you leading the service or product that you're creating? Are you kind of like hands on a daily basis, kind of like putting out fires? Or maybe do you have a CEO or a COO that's handling a lot of that?
Yeah.
A lot of operations is done by people. So, the idea of, bringing in and kind of like offloading some of that to either a general manager or to a COO or even a CEO, what that does is it makes your business more of an investable asset. So that's kind of like the second one is making sure that operations isn't necessarily going through 100% through the business owner.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the administration and accounting. So making sure that you have your financials, closed every month. If you're on an accrual basis or a cash basis, making sure that you guys are looking at that the seller's looking at their financials on a regular basis, and that they're closing their books and they're not getting behind, that all
Mhm.
their taxes are paid, that all their people are getting paid. And if they are behind, how is it that they're going to be able to get caught back up? Oftentimes we'll bring in a interim or outside CFO or controller or even staff accountant to help with the transaction in order to make sure that financials are getting reported timely to these buyers, because that's one of the critical elements, is that if you're not able to close your books and you guys are behind, or if the seller's behind on
Yeah.
accounting, then that'll just slow down the deal and sometimes even kill it.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think, I guess as an advisor, with Now Capital, I imagine, as those needs arise, whether it's an outside, CFO role, fractional CFO role, are those opportunities you can provide as part of your services, or you have your relationships, partnerships around, how do you go about that when you identify a need as their advisor?
Yeah, so we partner with a bunch of different organizations. One of them is Now CFO. So we
Yeah.
have access to a large bench of accountants, CFOs. Sometimes we do bring in specialist CFOs that are unique to the healthcare industry, because, as you know, this industry is probably one of the most complex industries when it comes to finance and accounting and compliance, like what you guys do.
Yep.
Because in no other industry, when you go and get a service, do you have to deal with third party payer, where you're dealing with deductibles and out of pocket max and co-pays and all this co-insurance.
Yep.
So doing the accounting on that type of transaction can be pretty complex. And so oftentimes we want to bring in specialists that understand the healthcare industry and can really help you navigate it and present the financials in a true and correct fashion. So yeah, we do have a large bench of people that we can tap in almost any different industry in markets all across the country.
Love that. Yeah, that's a great service. And then, real quick, so as of recording, we're nearing the end of quarter two here. And I met with somebody, interviewed somebody the beginning of the year to talk about, what's the market projecting to look like in 2025. I talked with another individual towards the end of Q1 to kind of get an update, on how things are looking. Now we're here at the end of Q2, and I think probably mixed reactions from how things have gone this year. I know there was a lot of excitement, lots of a lot of capital out there that needed to be released into the market. But what are you seeing trend lines when it comes to private equity, healthcare for the first half of the year, and then are you any indications for what it might look like the last half of the year?
Yeah, so there's never a perfect market, right? If someone tells you that you're going to sell into an ideal market, they're probably lying to you. So there's always going to be challenges with any market. And this year, January and February, we started off with a flurry of activity that kind of
Yeah.
happened. We had new customers that were signing up to sell their business, and then it tapered off pretty quickly.
Yep.
I think people were concerned with tariffs. They were concerned with what that was doing to the stock market. Anytime there's that type of uncertainty in the marketplace, people will, kind of hold their cards a little bit closer. And so maybe they're like, well, maybe I should, hold on until, um, this kind of clears up. And that's kind of what we've seen. So, the tariff situation seems to be, being resolved. It seems like the stock market has bounced back. And
Hmm.
so a lot of clients, we actually, in the month of May, we actually signed up the most new clients than we've ever done in company history. And so we
Wow.
had some people that were kind of just like waiting that out, I would say, waiting to
Yep.
see what the year would kind of do. And then they signed up with us. And so if that's any indication as to where this market's going, it seems like it started off with a little bit of a drag in Q1. I think it's picked back up here in Q3. We actually have a couple of transactions that are under LOI right now that are scheduled to
Hmm.
close. And so there's, to your point, there is always going to be an appetite from acquirers for almost any type of business.
Hmm.
Now, the real question is that how is that timing going to affect the seller's timing of what their goals are,
Yeah.
right? Because you're kind of trying to hit like a bullet with a bullet. You're trying to, shoot a bullet with a. You're trying to shoot a rifle and hit somebody else's bullet to make it match perfectly. I don't know if there's really ever an ideal scenario. So you really got to be well prepared and have your exit strategy mapped out so that any given situation you're well protected. right? And that could be selling into this market, selling into a market. I mean, we just got through, COVID was only what, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And so selling into a market like that, but nobody has a crystal ball. So it seems like the year started off with a flurry of activity. It seems like it's going to end here pretty strong, but nobody knows, right? We're all just making guesses and predictions. But it seems like at this point, from the data that I'm seeing, it's the number of closed deals that it might be at or slightly below the number of deals that have happened last year.
Yeah, great. I love that analogy, hitting a bullet with a bullet. That is so good and so accurate. So, Andrew, thank you for the insight. For those that are listening that maybe want to at least inquire about potentially working with you, maybe they're considering going to market. What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with us is to go to nowexit.com. And on our webpage, we have a link where you can schedule a strategy session with me. You can actually click through to that link. It'll take you to my Calendly page. You can get right on my schedule, and I'd be happy to work with any of the people that come as a referral to you to help them map out what their strategy session is going to be for whenever they're planning to exit their business. And I've done this for people that are looking to sell their business immediately, and also with people that are kind of like, hey, I have a date and an idea or an age in mind, and maybe it's 5 years out,
Yeah.
but I want to start getting prepared, right?
Yeah.
So we work with kind of different sets of people and all those types of time ranges of either, hey, I'm selling immediately, or maybe it's 5 years out, 2 to 5 years out, whatever the case may be. Happy to work with anybody and provide them with that complementary exit strategy. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour because it is a working session. So we do go through, top to bottom, all the different options. So that's the best way to get in touch with me, is to go to nowexit.com.
Perfect. Andrew, really good insight. Looking forward to seeing the last half this year and see if it plays out kind of the way you're thinking, and maybe a little uptick in activity. But appreciate you being on today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to help out.
All right, take care.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. For more information on the topic we covered today, you can reach out to me or to our guest. For any additional information on healthcare compliance pros, feel free to email me at jwin@hcp.md. Don't forget to tune in next week. Thank you.